Yo, it's your boy Logos. I want to react to this video from Matt Walsh where he discusses the murder and torture of Emmett Till. From what I've seen and heard, he puts his own spin on it, saying that the story has been manipulated and propagandized. We've been lied to about the details, and I think he really tries to sugarcoat the tragedy and murder of this young boy. Matt Walsh has a family, from my understanding. He has children, but suddenly he can't come up with the empathy, or at least I don't know, the common sense to not do some nonsense like this. People like him love to tout their Christian values and being a good person and all this other stuff, but they rarely ever have empathy for people that don't look like them or think like them. And I don't have any tolerance for people like that. Let's see what he has to say. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of reasons for me to pause the video, so be ready. Now I'm going to break it down, talk about why it's all nonsense.
I mean, that's the whole point here, that, seeing through this kind of propaganda isn't easy when the propaganda was written more than 70 years ago, but we should try anyway, just to see what we might find out. Again, they're lying blatantly to our faces about events that we all experienced, and that in most cases were caught on video for the whole world to see. If they can and do lie about those sorts of things, imagine what kind of lies they can tell about events that none of us experienced with no videos to go back and check to confirm the record.
People like Matt Walsh, they love to talk in vague terms. What they can do. Vague examples, vague people, vague entities that's controlling everything. Be specific. Say exactly who the people are. I have a few ideas of what people like Matt Walsh think the people are, but I'm not going to say it. I think you could figure it out too. But either way, I just hate how people like him always be vague with these types of things, but it's done on purpose, so you can't refute or go after their claims. It's all nonsense.
Consider every supposed racist atrocity from decades or centuries ago, every quote-unquote innocent minority wrongfully persecuted by racist whites. I'm not saying that all of those stories aren't true. I'm saying that you can't assume that they are true. You have to go back with a skeptical eye, willing to question even the narratives that are most taken for granted. Indeed.
Do you think Matt Walsh goes back and questions the narratives and claims of things that he agrees with? I don't think so. Do you think he has that same type of scrutiny for cases nowadays where it's related to maybe somebody that's unjustified? What's the word? You can't. Unjustifiable murder or unjustifiable killing by a police officer. Do you think he has the same amount of skepticism, or do you think he plays it evenly on both sides? I really don't think so. I think he really picks and chooses when he wants to have that type of view and standpoint, when it aligns with his ideology or his political stance.
Especially those narratives. So let's go through a couple of examples now. Let's begin that process today. And let's start with the killing of a 14-year-old black boy named Emmett Till. Now, there's a good chance that you've almost certainly heard of Emmett Till. As the writer Steve Saylor has pointed out, he's not just a fixture in high school history textbooks. He was also center stage during the BLM hysteria of the past few years. Quote, Emmett Till, who was murdered in 1955, has been mentioned in 427 different New York Times articles over just the last 10 years. Emmett Till was mentioned more often in American books in 2022 than in any previous year. So as far as enduring myths go, Emmett Till is certainly up there. The basic narrative, which you've probably been told in school.
Well, he's about to get into it, but he uses words and language on purpose. Enduring myth. Was he not murdered? Was he not tortured? Was he not killed? Was there no trial? Did they even prove that he was a person that supposedly did what this lying person said that he did in this store?
By the media is that Till was abducted and lynched by racist white people in Mississippi back in 1955. His crime allegedly was just simply whistling at a pretty white woman in a grocery store. Her name was Carolyn Bryant Donham. That was a serious violation of racial codes at the time, so Bryant, who was very offended, lied to her family and told them that Emmett Till had groped her. This is the story. And in response, Bryant's husband and his half-brother hunted the boy down a few days later, abducted him from a cabin, and brutally lynched him. The story was a major catalyst for the civil rights movement. Many decades later, in her 70s, Bryant admitted that she had lied about Emmett Till. Black activists then demanded that prosecutors charge her with a crime, and ultimately Bryant died before they could get their vengeance. That is the official narrative. A few years ago, when Bryant passed away, CBS News repeated this version of events verbatim on air. Watch.
Carolyn Bryant Dunham, the white woman who accused Emmett Till of making advances towards her, has died. 14-year-old Emmett Till was kidnapped and brutally murdered by Bryant's then-husband and his half-brother in Mississippi in 1955 over the allegation. The two men were acquitted in his killing by an all-white jury, but later confessed in an interview. The case gained national attention after Emmett Till's mother allowed Jet magazine to take and publish photos of her son's mutilated body in an open casket. The horrific image shocked the nation and served as the catalyst for the civil rights movement. Years after Till's death, Dunham admitted to fabricating parts of her story, although she was never charged with a crime.
Now, the problem here is that virtually every aspect of what that anchor just said is a fabrication. First of all, Emmett Till was not accused of merely making advances towards Bryant. That's an extremely, I guess we would say, sanitized and deliberately misleading way to present the story. According to Bryant's testimony in court, as well as her memoir, Emmett Till grabbed her hand and said, "How about a date, baby?" And when she tried to flee, Emmett Till followed her to the cash register, forcefully grabbed her waist and said, "What's the matter, baby? Can't you take it?" He told her she didn't need to be afraid and explained, quote, "I've been with white women before." Emmett Till did not leave the store until one.
A 14, it's so ridiculous. A 14-year-old boy that looks like he weighs no more than like 130 pounds, maybe, I don't know, 150 pounds, walks up to a white woman in the middle of the civil rights, well, before the civil rights era, but around the same time, and touches her and says, "I've been with white women before." Like, really? He probably never had like a kiss before at 14 years old, but yeah, he been with multiple white women before, and that sounds like something that's believable for you. Yeah, Walsh. Thank you for giving me the unsanitized, unsugar-coated version that they don't want us to hear about. Because what you're saying right now sounds like a lot more sensible or a lot more logical for a 14-year-old boy to do in that day and age. Yeah. 14-year-old boys are just pulling women left and right. Okay.
Of his friends entered and forcefully removed him. So this was, according to her, an attempted sexual assault, not just in advance. Now, these facts are obviously not flattering for Emmett Till, and for what it's worth.
So I got pause again. This is Mississippi. Was it not segregated? So he was, I guess, this store where this supposedly happened in was desegregated, and then after he approached her and started harassing her, nobody saw and did anything, and then he could follow her behind a counter in a business, which is not something you're supposed to do for anyone at any time period because you're not an employee or the owner, and nobody did anything or said anything about it. Come on. Come on, man.
This behavior would not be out of character for the Till family. I think it's worth noting, Emmett's father was named Lewis Till. He enlisted in the Army during World War II to avoid going to prison for domestic violence. But Lewis Till's behavior did not change overseas. He was court-martialed for the murder of an Allied civilian during the Italian campaign, as well as the rape of 2 pregnant Italian women. Ultimately, he was found guilty and hanged. And incidentally, he had been incarcerated at the same military prison as the American poet Ezra Pound, who was jailed for treason. Pound even wrote a verse about Lewis Till saying, "Till was hung yesterday for murder and rape with trimmings." Now, of course, the fact that Emmett Till.
So now we're getting into the sins of your father is the sins of the son. Okay, so I guess JD Vance is inevitably going to be a crackhead eventually because his mom was. What about Ronald Reagan? His father was an alcoholic. Was Ronald Reagan an alcoholic too? He was just hiding it very well. Like this. Oh my goodness. The arguments of people like him It's so stupid when you think about it beyond the nonsense topic that you're trying to discuss right now. Because your father did something, that means you're going to do it. Okay, so for victims of abusive parents, guess what, guys? You're also going to be an abuser. Sorry, your dad did it, your mom did it, and now you're going to do it. You just can't help yourself. According to people like Matt Walsh. Really? Oh my God. They'll say and do anything to justify their own racist, idiotic beliefs. At the beginning of the video, where he was discussing the whole story and black activists trying to get justice for Emmett Till, you could see his body language, how he's so tired of it, or he doesn't like it. He droops off to the side, slumps his shoulders, and all this other stuff. You could just tell where his mind is at to begin with. He just doesn't want to flat out say, I don't care what happened, I think it's just fine to begin with. Because then you just can't openly say your racism, then you'll just lose all your sponsors. And people who are decent and actually have a heart that are still fans of yours can't really follow you then. A lot of his comments on just this video where he totes a line got people disagreeing with him and saying this isn't right, what are we doing here? So of course he can't go all in when he's doing this nonsense and people are already calling it out. But I'm not just gonna let him just get away with toting the line. Say the thing, man. Just say what you really feel. It's clear and obvious what you say and how you feel. And that's why I'll never feel bad when bad stuff happens to people like him. He has kids, but you don't care about other people's children being tortured and murdered. Christian, by the way.
His father was a domestic abuser and a rapist does not by itself demonstrate that Emmett Till did anything wrong. But, you know, if we're just being logical about it, it makes it more likely that he would engage in similar conduct. And taken together with Bryant's testimony, it's obviously context that makes her claim more credible, though still none of us can ever know for sure what really happened in that store that day. I mean, we really don't know for sure. But
also, Christian, you know, Jesus wipes your sins, each person stands before the God. All that nonsense goes out the window when you're trying to make a argument that justifies a young boy being tortured and killed. And people wonder why I don't take people being religious or being Christian as some type of indicator of you being a good person. These are shit like him existed since the beginning of Christianity and will continue to exist. Shit, Christianity was used to justify slavery.
Major lie about Emmett Till is what happened many years after his death. And the claim from the left and the media and activists is that Bryant later recanted her allegations that Emmett Till had physically assaulted her. They say that Bryant admitted in her dying years that she made the whole thing up and she feels really bad about it. This is a core part of the story, and here's ABC repeating that claim. Listen.
We're coming.
Reverend Wheeler Parker says that his Bible tells him to forgive. And he says that's what he's doing here.
Thank you.
Taking an overnight train to Mississippi with his wife, trying to make peace.
Oh, my goodness.
The murder of his cousin by a clan of racists.
If you dwell on it, you'll come out of it injured.
Nearly 70 years ago to this day. This is where the white woman who worked here claimed that his 14-year-old cousin had grabbed her, put his hands around her waist, and then told her he had slept with white women before. It was all over the daily papers with quotes from a young Wheeler Parker calling 21-year-old Carolyn Bryant a pretty lady, interviews he says he never gave. Bryant and her husband Roy owned the store. In 2007, she told a book writer that she lied, and then she died in 2023, never apologizing to the black families.
What you should notice about all these stories is how definitive they are. All the official versions of the Emmett Till story make the claim that beyond a shadow of a doubt, Bryant admitted she was wrong. Pretty much everyone accepts this version of events to the point that just a couple of years ago, black activists tried to have the elderly woman thrown in prison. At the time, she was in her 80s and in failing health. But they didn't care. They went all the way to a grand jury, which rejected their claims.
Yes, you're right. I don't care if you murdered or tortured somebody. Now you're 80. Yes, you should be held accountable. The party of law and order, remember? Always talking about law and order, the police, this, that, and the other. If you can't do the crime, don't do the time, all this other stuff. But conveniently, Oh, the poor old lady should have to be held accountable for her actions. Of course, she took somebody else's life away, but why would you want to hurt her for the last 2 years of hers after she lived a good 60 years after her crime? How dare you? What are you going to do next, huh? Try to hold the Nazis accountable who got away? Like, Christian, by the way, good person, Christian values, Islam.
Watch.
Well, a grand jury in Mississippi today declined to indict the white woman whose accusations set off the lynching of Emmett Till nearly 70 years ago. Carolyn Bryant Dunham, now 88, initially claimed that Till made unwanted advances towards her at her family's grocery store. It led to the brutal torture and lynching of the 14-year-old. The prosecutor said the grand jury found insufficient evidence to charge Dunham.
Here are just a few of the top comments on that video to give you an idea of the public reaction. Quote, "She's definitely going to hell." Quote, "You got to be kidding me. Don't worry. God knows what you did. We know what you did. One day you'll receive what you deserve. May God hold Emmett in his hands." Quote, "Always angers me when the truly evil live to a ripe old age." Now, those are the least deranged quotes I can find. It's all out bloodlust over a dying woman in her 80s. And it's all based on a total fabrication. Bryant never recanted her allegation. The claim that she recanted was made by a historian named Timothy Tyson. He wrote a book in 2017 called The Blood of Emmett Till, in which he claimed that Bryant recanted her claims about Till in 2008, many decades after the incident. He recorded all of his interviews for the book, including his interviews with Bryant, standard practice for historians who are writing a book. So you'd think he'd be able to support his claims, especially a claim as explosive as that one. But it turns out that somehow Tyson's transcripts and audio recordings did not capture this bombshell admission. The FBI opened an investigation into Tyson's claims, since it would obviously be relevant to a criminal proceeding, even if the statute of limitations had expired, and they found no support for it whatsoever. This is from the Washington Post. The article is from 2021. Quote, "The Justice Department has closed the latest federal investigation into the 1955 lynching of Emmett Till in rural Mississippi. Federal authorities reopened the case 3 years ago after a new book reported that Bryant had denied in an interview that Till had made any advances. In theory, that could have meant she lied in decades-old court proceedings. Justice Department officials said Monday that when the FBI questioned Bryant about these allegations, about these alleged statements to the book's author, she said she did not make them, and the author's interview tape and transcripts do not show her making such statements. The book said Bryant told Tyson that Till had not come on to her sexually, a disclosure that directly contradicted her testimony 6 decades earlier, when she told a jury that Till grabbed her by the waist and uttered obscenities. In a statement, Justice Department said the FBI was unable to confirm Tyson's assertion that Dunham had recanted her prior testimony. When agents interviewed her, she denied ever recanting and provided no new information, Justice Department statement said. Authorities concluded there was insufficient evidence to prove that she ever told the professor that any part of her testimony was untrue. Although the professor represented that he had recorded 2 interviews with her, he provided the FBI with only 1 recording, which did not contain any recantation. A transcript of Tyson's other interview also did not contain the alleged recantation, officials said. Separately, NBC News reported that, quote, "But Dunham denied to federal investigators that she lied in her testimony," a source of knowledge of the case said, "and there were inconsistencies with statements made by Tyson." So to recap, to this day, they're lying to us about what the woman alleged.
Okay, so are all the other witnesses at the time of the trial lying too? So, of course, we're just going to believe there's one woman who has flip-flopped those statements over the past few decades. What about all the other people that was there and witnessed it too and was under oath too? Do their opinions don't matter? Why do they not matter to you, Mr. Walsh? And that's much more respect that you deserve, but why do they not matter to you, Mr. Walsh? It's not just her statements and everybody else's. Like, the picking and choosing of information is exactly what he's doing. Why he's accusing of whether it's the mainstream media or the government or evil black people and the evil black activists trying to get you. He's doing the exact same thing that he's accusing them of doing. Excuse me. And it's clear and obvious why he's doing that. Because I think deep down he doesn't see a problem with the whole thing at all. Regardless of if he has children, he might even have a son himself. He doesn't care.
Emmett Till did to her. They're lying by claiming the woman recanted her claim. She didn't. And they're burying a lot of information.
And also, if I get an interview for the FBI, of course I'm gonna say, I didn't say that because I'm gonna go to jail and be held accountable for my actions. So her saying I didn't do it when everybody else is saying that she did, yeah, I really don't have her as a trusted source when she's trying to defend herself and protect herself. But clearly she don't give a damn about anybody else. She's not a good person, a decent person. Hopefully she rotten in hell and hope somebody pissed on her grave. But yeah, I'm not really caring about what her statement or opinion is. She's not trustworthy.
About the case, about Emmett Till, including the fact that his father was a rapist. And with all that in mind, you have to wonder if they're telling the truth about any aspect of this particular story. I mean, once they're willing to fabricate important details in order to create a myth for the purposes of launching the civil rights movement, then there's no reason to trust anything they say about it. Now, does that mean that his killing was justified?
Does he have that same does he have that same mindset when Trump lies, or when Breitbart lies, or when Fox News lies, or the Daily Caller lies? Like, no, he doesn't. Like, you know, he doesn't have this high standard for truth and honesty. He's full of shit. He just want to have one little thing to try to undermine this entire tragedy because he's trash. Talking about your father was this, so that makes you that. Okay, then what's burying Trump? Since Donald Trump is what he is, and he's connected to, you know, Epstein and Steve Bannon and all these other people connected with Epstein Island and the little trafficking network, I guess Trump and all his kin and children are also rapists or grapists and PDFs and all these other things too. Maybe you are too, since you defend him and support him and vote for him. People as stupid as Matt Walsh and people who agree with Matt Walsh and his ideas always fail to think beyond their own point of view. It only sounds good when it's applied to somebody else and not them.
No, obviously not. It was a brutal murder. We know that. There's really no disputing that. But the popular narrative about this case leaves out important details and blatantly lies about others. And there's no disputing that either. Which makes you wonder about, you know, what else about the story they aren't telling us. Nothing about the story or any of these kinds of stories can be taken on faith anymore.
Okay. So apparently, well, in the period of like 1880 to about 1968, there was about like maybe 4,000 or so lynchings, average of about 70 to 85 lynchings a year. I'm pretty sure you think that's overinflated. But the truth is, it's probably under-recorded because most times it probably wasn't written down. Witnesses didn't talk about it. Nobody cared enough to report it or document it or track it. So there's probably a lot more that people don't know about or that's undocumented or not taken record of. Also, not to mention the fact that when lynchings took place and they would set people on fire, they would have postcards for it. So is that also not true, Matt Walsh? Because I can go on Google and search up lynching postcards pretty easy and find it right there. What about the postcards when they had a lynch burned black person say, oh, we had a good barbecue today, and we would send that off to their families? Is that just propaganda, Matt Walsh, to make white people look bad and feel bad? It just gets so tiring after a while. And people like him wants to control your life, the way you think, the way you live, the God you believe in, or if you don't even believe in the God, because they have this nonsense idea in their head that they have a higher authority or higher moral authority than you do. And they should dictate what you do with your life because they're infallible. They'll say it's left-wingers and Democrats and liberals that want to destroy the country and all this other stuff. Like, oh man, whenever somebody tells you they have all the answers and all the ideas and you've been lied to your whole life, and they're the only person who could figure out and crack the code of how you've been deceived, 9 times out of 10, they're selling you nonsense, like a pyramid scheme. Historians isn't just a conglomerate or one person going after everything, or a group of people with one ideology going after a particular answer or purpose. Many different people from many different backgrounds go after different stories in history and figures for many different reasons. And this whole idea we've all been lied to and I'm the one guy that cracked the code is just nonsense. Like a snake oil salesman. He probably sells some type of bullshit product too. Probably some bullshit book.
Doesn't mean they're all wrong. Any of these kinds of stories you learned in school, you should go back again and check. You cannot assume that any of them are entirely true, and many of them might be entirely wrong. And in fact, lynchings in general are one of the most inflammatory aspects of American history, and therefore nobody wants to be honest about them. There's a hysteria about lynchings that led to a federal anti-lynching bill just a few years ago, if you remember that. Even though no black person has been lynched in this country at all in living memory, white people have certainly...
In living memory. My father is old enough. The Google search only shows up till 1968. I highly doubt they just cut it off collectively in the white conscience, white supremacist consciousness. Say, yeah, we're just gonna stop at 1968 to do lynchings. Yeah, that didn't really happen. But let's say that's true. Okay, fine. My father is more than old enough to be like in high school when the last lynching supposedly took place in 1968. Live in memory, my grandmother lived to be 100 and something years old. So she was around in like 1920, 1915, 1918 time. Yeah, there was no lynchings after 1918, Matt Walsh. Thank you. Thank you for teaching me about the history I didn't know about. Thank you, my white savior. How could I have thought?
Been attacked for their skin color, as we saw at the top of the show. But there have been no anti-black lynchings at all in many, many decades. And there's this idea that if you object to any of the propaganda about lynching, then you must endorse the murder of innocent black people. But that's obviously not true. And all that matters is the truth. That's all we're saying about all these stories. What actually happened? What is the truth? You're saying some things that aren't true. I want to know what the actual truth is. That's all. Now, the popular narrative about lynching today is that it was a form of murderous violence inflicted by white.
The last documented traditional lynching in the United States occurred on March 21st, 1981, when Ku Klux Klan members abducted and killed 19-year-old Michael Donald in Mobile, Alabama, hanging his body from a tree. 1981. People like him and people who subscribe to his beliefs will try to tell you that black people, brown people in third world countries are low IQ, but he's too fucking stupid and lazy to go on the Google search and actually say something that's remotely hard to refute. How old is Matt Walsh? Because if he's born after 1981, that just makes it even more hilarious, because he was born after the most recently known lynching in the United States. So forgive me for this pause, but this is such nonsense. I just gotta see it. This piece of shit. Matt Walsh was born in 1986. In living memory. It was only 5 years after you was born, dickhead. Christian. Conservative. Oh my goodness, man. It's like a comedy. I'm sorry. It's like a comedy. Just how stupid the stuff these people say, and then how easy it is to refute. It's like a setup, like you're in the comedy act and you have somebody that you're working off of. He sells a hook and I do the punchline, because what is this? This is a joke.
People on black people for racial reasons. Now, it's true, of course, that those kinds of lynchings have occurred in American history. Not anytime recently, which is what made that anti-lynching bill so ridiculous, not to mention the fact that lynching was already very much illegal anyway. And yet even Tuskegee University, which is a historically black university, admits that between 1882 and 1968, more than, and this is according to their tally, more than 27% of lynching victims were white. Now, if lynching was a form of racial violence, then why would a significant percentage of the victims...
Oh my goodness. Yes, 27% was white, but the 72% was black. You fool. Like, okay. So you're trying to tell me that the reason why these 72% of black lynchings for the exact non-racial reason as these 27% of white lynchings. And you know what's also funny? People like him love to bring up per capita and love to bring up statistics, but they also love to fuck the statistics and change it up and muddy it depending on their argument. Now, 72% or 27% is so much that you could discount the amount of lynchings of black people. But when they talk about crime statistics, they love to make a small percentage within the black community who is doing crimes. They love to paint an image on every black person. You have to read books. You have to love history. Learn about history. Expand your mind. Expand your knowledge. Or these idiots will fool you like they fooled their audience.
be white? The answer is that historically, lynching was a form of mob justice. In the vast majority of cases, the victim, white or black, or any race, was accused of committing a serious crime. Now, often, I mean, we can't know exactly how often, but they were indeed guilty of committing the crime.
How do you know? He just assumes they were guilty. And then he just talked about like the BLM hysteria. So now he's defending mob violence and mob justice. I'm pretty sure he talks about crime and law and all this other stuff when it comes to police shootings, but now he's defending mob justice and mob law. What, like, come on. What am I hearing right now? It's like I'm hearing this is like something I would read on 4chan. Which makes sense. Like, just because you're 40 doesn't mean you're actually mentally mature. You could be just a stupid incel basement dweller mentally, even if you don't look at it outwardly. There's many examples of that online, you know. But it's just so dumb.
Important point is that lynching was not an exclusively racial form of violence. Often it had nothing to do with race at all. I mean, we can confidently say that most of the 27% of white victims, assuming that percentage is not an undercount, which is a very massive assumption.
Also, I want to know too, that 27%, were those... So, people who are considered white now wasn't always considered white, like Irish, Italians, and certain other groups, like from throughout Europe. So, was that 20% of white Americans that was lynched, were they actually considered white by the white people at that time, or were they people like Italians or other people that were discriminated against who were considered as white and had discriminatory or slurs given to them? Is that the case? I want to know. I've already spent so much time pausing it that I'm gonna let it play out, but I have a feeling that I'm right. And he can't be mad at me for assuming, because you're already assuming that all the lynchings that happened back then was justified, or a lot, or at least bare minimum trying to defend it.
But we can assume that they were not lynched, for racial reasons. Does it make sense then to assume that every black victim was lynched for racial reasons? Of course it doesn't. In a certain significant percent of cases, they were lynched for the same reason whites were lynched, because they had committed or were accused of committing a crime. And lynching was not invented in 1882, by the way. It had been used all through the early history of the United States and before that. And during colonial times, too. We don't have any data, as far as I could find, on the racial makeup of the victims in the early 19th century and prior to that. But there is good reason to suspect that a large number of them, perhaps even a majority, perhaps even a large majority, were white.
Yes, I'm going to assume that in a time of slavery where you could rape, torture, and kill your slave because you didn't see them as a human being. Yeah, I'm sure the majority of lynchings and hangings were, white people. Oh, boo-hoo. Oh, Like, come on. Yeah, same people who would do evil, sick, evil, devilish things like throw babies to alligators and animals. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't hang any black people. They would never hang a slave. They would just do something much worse. I can't imagine agreeing with what he's saying unless I had like a brain aneurysm or like my IQ dropped to like single digits, or I'm just racist. Like if I was just racist, then I can understand agreeing with the nonsense he says, because like no matter what you do or what you say, it's black people's fault. And they're the problem. We're almost done.
And this wasn't just mob justice. Sometimes it was. Sometimes mobs of angry townsfolk banded together to kill some alleged wrongdoer. And sometimes they would do that even though they had a court system and jails that could have brought the alleged criminal to justice in a, civilized and constitutional way. But sometimes lynching was less a case of mob justice and more a case of frontier justice. Large swaths of the American territory through much of its early history didn't really have a functioning court system, so there wasn't much you could do with murderers, rapists, and cattle.
Have you ever been in an argument with somebody or a debate with somebody and they just bring up something that's completely irrelevant of what you're trying to talk about? Who the hell is talking about frontier justice? Where people trying to hunt for bucks and raccoons and bison and destroying wildlife populations. Nobody talking about that in the frontiers. The frontiers? What the fuck are you talking about? The frontiers? Really? Really? We're not talking about years after the Louisiana Purchase. We're not talking about arguments in small towns. We're talking about organized, racially motivated mob justice and people who love to tout law and order, obey the police, obey the court system. There's nothing wrong with the court system, or slowly making excuses for people not obeying the court system and just murdering people. But if it was him or his son or daughter, he'll want you to pray for him. But I'm supposed to believe these people are not scum.
Thieves in those cases, but execute them quickly. And, sometimes they would leave their bodies hanging from a tree as a warning to anyone who might think of committing similar crimes. It was brutal and ugly, but sometimes brutal and ugly options were the only ones available. Maybe you can think of a better way to deal with like a murderer if you're living in a frontier town and there's no court system and no jail and you've got someone who just murdered someone or is a rapist.
That's BS, because even smaller towns, you would have at least like a local bailiff or the mayor that would be like judges or a judge, or you at least have somebody that can make an argument, or at least you have somebody from the town over that could come. Like, I swear this stuff only makes sense if you're absolutely effing stupid. Really. They couldn't think of anything better to do, so they could come together to catch a guy, but they can't come together to come to a I don't know, civilized way to dish out justice. Okay.
What are you supposed to do with that person? Again, we have a story that is much more complicated than the one told today by the media and the education system. Lynchings happened for hundreds of years. A huge number of them had nothing to do with race. Some of them were actually justified and necessary. Some of them were not. Some of them were racial killings. Some of them were not. We can't possibly know what the percentages look like. We can't break it down into a pie chart. And so instead, the popular narrative.
Remember I said at the start, people like him operate in vagueness, because when you operate in vagueness, you can't hold them accountable when you disprove what they say. You can't hold them accountable to what they say because, well, I didn't really mean it like that. I meant it like this. And they make it just vague enough where they can wiggle their way out of it for their supporters. For the ones that actually, have a little bit of empathy in the heart and the soul.
Narrative has simplified the pie so that the racial killings are the whole pie. And now lynching has become a symbol of anti-black racism. But historically, the concept of lynching did not have that automatic racial connotation. It's only relatively recently that the noose has become this like racially charged symbol. But it should tell you something that Literally every prominent case of a racist noose being left somewhere to intimidate black people at any point this century has turned out to be a hoax. All of them have been hoaxes. And maybe that should tell you something. One of the most powerful scenes, for my money, in the miniseries Lonesome Dove, one of the great pieces of, of television or film ever made. But one of the most powerful scenes is when Tommy Lee Jones's character lynches a group of thieves and murderers, including one of them who was a former friend. All of them were white. Now, it's fiction, obviously, but also a pretty fair reflection of historical reality, a pretty fair reflection of what lynching looked like and why it was done in many, many cases all throughout American history. But importantly, 35 years ago when the show came out, 35, 40 years ago, whatever it was, nobody flagged the lynching scene as some kind of historical whitewashing.
I haven't seen the scene that he's talking about. But I would say this is a movie, so they don't give you the context of it. Or at least they probably don't give the beginning, but I would imagine there probably was some type of court, there was some type of trial. There was probably witnesses that confirmed that these guys did what they did. If this is the guy's best friend or friend that he's hanging to, then he probably isn't just hanging him on a rum haul. Maybe he has evidence and witness statements to confirm that he actually did what he did. Maybe that's the difference. I don't understand what's so difficult about it, but I'm not a piece of trash. So, of course, I can't think like him.
It looked normal to the audience because that's how everyone understood the concept of lynching until, I would argue, the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, so this is just another case of, right-wing, disingenuous podcaster that wants to play stupid so they can say things that they truly feel deep inside but don't have the balls to admit out loud out of fear of losing their audience, losing their money, and truly showing the world how much of a piece of shit they actually are. That's how I see it. You might see it differently, but that's fine. This isn't about getting people to agree with me. This is just about me wanting to talk about what he had to say. Not like I thought it would be. It was nonsense. If you have any issue with anything I said just now or in the entire video, let me know in the comments. I'm always open to a discussion. I think this will be very interesting. And honestly, I'd much rather people expose who they are so I don't have to waste my time hanging out with them, interacting with them, than them hiding it and then wasting my time and my energy and my friendship. That's how I see things. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to do more history stuff because I love history, especially military history. So there's going to be more of that stuff coming up pretty soon. Let me know what you think. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.